Because I guess that when you can't stop someone's freedom of speech, you just derail their life entirely. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to my channel. A friend of mine who works in advertising told me recently that there is one thing that scares companies more than anything, and that is left-wing activism. I wonder why. It seems like every time I turn around, there's some new left-wing group pressuring someone somewhere to pull funding, sponsorship, or advertising from a publication, a television show, or an individual. Because you know, if you can't win an argument outright, you just make sure your opposition starves. Because you know, if you can't have socialism, you make socialism. Many of you are probably already aware that a number of conservative voices in the last week have been perma-banned from Facebook, including Milo, Laura Loomer, Alex Jones, and Paul Joseph Watson. I mean, to be fair, this is not new information considering that conservatives are blocked from social media all the time. But I think in this case, people are just really struggling to understand why these individuals have been banned. Fun fact, Facebook just randomly decided that my website goes against its community standards, and now you can't post anything from it on Facebook. You can't share my posts either on Facebook, actually, now that we're talking about it. Yay, censorship. But I think something that's routinely overlooked in relation to shutting down and banning conservative and right-wing voices is that it doesn't begin and end with social media. It has the ability to spill out into the real world. And that's what's happening. Because really, the question here is, what stops any company at all from deciding to blacklist people based on their political opinions? Besides laws that cover discrimination and all that. In the last week, MasterCard has been bullied and pressured by left-wing activists to basically stop and block far-right voices from using their services. What? Left-wing activists have forced MasterCard to hold a shareholder vote on the creation of a human rights committee that would monitor payments to the far right with a view to cut off disfavored individuals and political groups from receiving money from supporters. The proposal was submitted by left-wing advocacy organization This Is Us, whose board members are linked to Color of Change, a group that has been pressuring banks, payment processors, and credit card companies to cut off services to right-wingers, Islam critics, and critics of progressivism. The board of MasterCard is not in favor of this whatsoever and has asked its shareholders to vote this insane idea down. But what happens if they don't? Then I guess the credit card company will become a gatekeeper of human rights. Who would have thought? Do you guys ever just sit back and think how stupid everything is getting? Like, yeah, we're in 2019, but we're at this point where financial institutions can have human rights committees to stop people with differing opinions from giving money to people. What? Now, MasterCard is not the only company to be pressured like this in this way. Left-wing groups have been targeting other organizations with the sole purpose of trying to hurt people on the right. In their own words, these two left-wing organizations believe that internet infrastructure companies like web host GoDaddy, social media platforms like Facebook, and payment firm PayPal have been doing business with or providing a forum for neo-Nazis and other hate groups. The logic here is like the social equivalent of a lobotomy. So anyway, I went and did some clicking around. So the left-wing organization Color of Change, super creative name there, guys, also run another website called Blood Money. And basically Blood Money lays out in no uncertain terms which companies are inadvertently doing business with the far right and white supremacists. Because basically everyone these days is a white supremacist. As the result of this Blood Money website, Apple Pay and PayPal, as two examples, have actually blocked particular groups of people and individuals from accessing their services. Other financial services like PayPal and GoFundMe also basically block particular people and groups from accessing their services, although it's kind of unclear where that particular pressure came from, but it's happened nevertheless. Because let's remember, left-wing activism is terrifying. Now, according to the executive director of Color of Change, the group is now targeting MasterCard, Visa, and American Express. Let's just remember for a second that these companies don't just operate in America. They operate worldwide. None of us are safe. Are we in hell? This feels like hell. There's also a whole section of this Blood Money website that basically tells us which companies the group is pressuring and how successful they've been with their pressure. Scrolling through, we very quickly find out that Visa and American Express are engaged, and they've listed MasterCard as proactive. If you go to the Color of Change website as well, you'll very quickly find out that a lot of the things that they're trying to do involve pressuring people to stop associating with President Trump, and also pressure particular companies to cut off their relationships with people and other organizations, which is mental. Real talk though, all these people probably own pussy hats and say things like, "Not my president." Still your president. Let me just say though, this is just one group. There are literally hundreds of these groups out there who are lobbying and pressuring and bullying companies to do the things that they want them to do. The other thing I'll say here too is that I'm sure that there are right-wing institutions who are doing the exact same things, but I don't feel like they're doing it in the same way. The other thing I found really interesting about this Color of Change group is that they're affiliated with another group called Act Blue, who apparently, according to some of my Googling, is a George Soros-funded group. No surprises there. Because straight up, I'm always just like, where do these people get their money? Because none of them work. You want to enact change? Just get a nice benefactor like Daddy Soros and Mummy Clinton. Wow, we really digressed there. Back to the topic at hand. So besides pressuring web hosting platforms and financial institutions and services, these people have also gone after banks, asking them to close down the accounts of particular individuals. One such bank is Chase Bank, who closed down the accounts of a number of people, including journalist Laura Loomer. If you don't know who Laura Loomer is, at this point she is basically banned everywhere, including, but not limited to, Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, Medium, Teespring, all the social media platforms, all the crowdfunding platforms, PayPal. She is gone from everywhere, basically wiped off the internet. Yes, actual transportation companies have blocked her. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of unclear why she's been banned from Lyft and Uber. Although I will say that the CEO of Lyft is a massive liberal and a massive, massive critic of Trump, so that might have something to do with it. But really, there are a lot of reasons why someone might be banned from a ride-sharing service. Politics has apparently become one of them. But I'm gonna reiterate again, Loomer had her account closed by Chase Bank really with no warning or reason, as did the leader of the Proud Boys and a number of other people who were also using the service. Interestingly, Wells Fargo, who's another bank, closed the account of Nikki Fried, a Democrat who basically is a very loud supporter of medical marijuana. The bank has a policy against serving marijuana-related business because Fried would be receiving donations from marijuana lobbyists. I'm bringing this up mainly to illustrate that people on the left are sometimes hit with these kind of policies. And in this case, this policy stands because under federal law, marijuana is still illegal. And in this case, the bank is just complying with existing laws, which makes sense. But hate speech is also illegal. And I suppose part of my question here is, if banks and companies are taking cues from legislation, and they're using that as the excuse for closing an account or behaving in a particular way, then what stops them from using hate speech as the reason for closing someone's account, or prohibiting someone from using their services? Haha! Checkmate, neocons. I mean, to be fair, everything today is hate speech, so I'm not really sure where that policy would begin and end. Like I discussed in my video last week, companies get political all the time. I'm not saying it's not super disconcerting and something that we should be aware of, because that's why I'm making this video. We should be aware of it and we should keep our eyes peeled for it, but it's not new. But something along these lines that I've found very disconcerting lately is when police decide to turn a blind eye to particular events because they happen to concern people on the right. Some of you will be aware of an activist called Tommy Robinson who is currently running for EU Parliament. Something that I want to note here before I continue is that you don't have to like or agree with Tommy Robinson. In fact, you don't have to like or agree with anyone that I've talked about in this video so far. The thing that I'm trying to get across here is namely that, yes, everyone is very concerned about censorship on social media and on the internet, but it's happening to people in real life now. This activism, and particularly left-wing activism, is having real-world consequences. On one day of his campaigning, on 3 separate occasions, he was assaulted by people who obviously don't like him. And in each situation, the police were there, watching and did nothing. In fact, if anything, the police tried to escape the area. I mean, it kind of makes sense though. They probably don't know how to fight crime anymore, considering they spend all their time trying to get people for saying mean, pointy things on the internet. A similar thing happened again in Portland, where a journalist and writer was attacked by Antifa at a rally. They put pepper spray in his face and someone punched him in the stomach. And again, police were present, but did absolutely nothing.
At another point, he tells us he was punched in the stomach. No says he tried to tell an officer in the moment.
He informed me that they wouldn't do anything right now because that would be a quote-unquote escalation.
What I find very disconcerting about these two situations is that you have police passively standing by and letting these things happen, potentially because they don't like or agree with the individual who's being attacked. In the last 2 months, British left-wing politician Jeremy Corbyn had an egg thrown at him, and the man was arrested. So why, I guess my question is there different treatment over here for Jeremy Corbyn and other politicians who've been attacked similarly, and different treatment for Tommy? Police don't get to pick and choose who they help. Their entire job, the entire purpose of what they do is to protect people from crime and to stop crime from happening. Hitting someone or punching them, pepper spraying their face is a crime. And you don't get to just decide when you start enforcing the law. Either you do it across the board for everyone or for no one. That being said, I don't really want to live in a society without police officers stopping bad people. So maybe that whole like all or nothing thing doesn't really work. The point here is you have an individual who's actually campaigning, running for EU Parliament, and they're still not protected by the police. And to me, that is absurd. So yes, again, while being banned and censored on social media is incredibly frustrating and corrosive to political discussion, there's a much bigger picture here. And that picture is, where does any of this stop? Something that I see turning into a huge problem as all of this rolls on is that basically anyone with a right-wing viewpoint now is characterized as a Nazi, a white supremacist, a bigot, or far right. No matter how moderate and factual you are, you're still far right. Which means, and let me spell it out for everyone, anyone who holds conservative, libertarian, or even moderate views, according to these people, you're all fair game. Even as I was researching for this video, something that occurred to me was, what's stopping these left-wing lobby groups from basically going after telecommunication companies and saying that they need to cut off the internet or the phone services of particular undesirable individuals? What's stopping them from doing that? The left could easily argue that phone companies and telecommunication companies are facilitating engagement and connection with the far right. What stops them from pressuring particular airlines from stopping particular people from flying? Again, they could easily argue that these airlines are facilitating travel for the far right. How long is it before we have companies and businesses, or even the government maybe at some stage, bringing in something that looks like China's social credit scores, where they basically have an actual ranking? Every citizen has a ranking in China based on their behavior. The exact methodology is a secret, but example infractions include bad driving, smoking in no smoking zones, buying too many video games, and posting fake news online. And you want to know how people are punished for having these bad social credit scores? Well, some of them can't take airplanes, and some of them can't board trains, among other weird and unusual punishments. I know that some of you will think that a lot of what I'm saying here is insane. And look, it might be. I don't think it is, but it totally might be. But I guess my point is, we're at this point where everyone, like I said, who holds a right-wing viewpoint in any capacity seems to be labeled far right. And a lot of the common sense that you and I think is totally normal thinking is, again, labeled far right. So yes, a lot of this starts off with these companies and these social media platforms and telecommunication companies and so on from blocking particular websites, blocking particular commentators, and we always think that it's going to start off and maybe even end like that. But it's not. Left-wing activists have gone further than just getting you censored and banned on the internet. What they're actually trying to do now is hit you where it hurts most: money. I just don't see any of this ending here. And I very much believe that people need to be aware of the ability and the power of these institutions, companies, and people, and the things that they can do to affect our everyday lives. Because let's be honest, if they get MasterCard and Visa and American Express, who are they gonna go for next? The main thing I wanna get across in this video is that, yes, being censored on the internet sucks. And for a lot of us who work through social media, a lot of the time, being banned and being censored is incredibly detrimental to our work. It's also very irritating because then you can't communicate with anyone, and really, what's the point of social media other than to communicate? Something that I think is substantially more important than just being censored on the internet, and believe me, like I said, censorship on the internet is not okay, is these people going out and actually trying to get you in the real world. So that being said, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm being a crazy person and this is really not that bad? Or do you think that things are going to continue to get worse if we continue down this road? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so, just don't be rude about it. And I will see you guys next time.